What up, what up, what up, what up, what up, what up, everybody? They say dance like nobody's watching, but what if people are watching? Whatever. Hey, what up? I'm Ari Temkin. This is Showtime on Phantom. And boy, how about these active Dallas Cowboys, right? Last week, we hemmed and hawed and were upset that the Cowboys weren't active. They weren't doing enough. They weren't improving their roster. People were pissed. They needed to spend more money. They said they were going all in. And this could very well be the Cowboys going all in. Now, there's only one thing to report in terms of what's actually happened, but there are a lot of things that could presumptively happen now that we have some rumors that are beginning to swirl around the Dallas Cowboys. And I think in many ways it sort of proves that the Cowboys are taking the right approach, whether you agree or disagree with that. All right, I'm Ari Temkin. This is Phantom, Showtime on Phantom, to be more specific. And we bring you to the center of the Dallas sports discussion every day right here at 12 o'clock. So thank you all for being a part of today's show and everyday show for that matter. And hit that share button if you have not yet already. And as soon as I do, I will get started as soon as I do that. So I'm just at the mercy of the slow computer that I'm on, which is not really slow, but it's kind of slow relative to what I need in terms of like immediacy. Like it's not right now, so it's not quick enough. But I see that there's been 30 shares already, so you guys are killing it. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. And we'll get started here in a moment as soon as I can just type out something that makes sense and is coherent, and that way we can get started. Okay, so shout out to everybody watching on Phantom, on the Dallas Cowboys America's team page, on YouTube, on the Ari Temkin radio page, wherever you're watching. Thank you for being a part of the show. Buddy Medley says, get Quinn with a bunch of hearts, and then says hello. Wayne Bledsoe says, hey. Jesse Murphy says, really hope we sign McDowell too. A lot of excitement. Whereas last week there was a lot of disappointment because, look, I think at the end of the day, fans just want to see movement. They want to see other players infused because there's a lot of potential in other players that aren't on the team, right? We kind of already know the ceiling of a lot of the players that we already know. So there's just this excitement around the potential for other players. And I get it. You know, I understand it completely. And look, I think there are certain guys that are, you know, we can look at and evaluate and say this guy has a lot of upside, and then there are other guys where it's, you know, maybe not as much upside. Christopher Kuhn says, hope we get Barry. William White says, Robert Quinn from the Dolphins. Who or what would we trade, though? All right, so let's start with what I've written under here, which is the opening rant, hard to disagree with the Cowboys' approach. And, look, this is something that I've been saying now for, you know, a couple of weeks. There was disappointment last week with the Cowboys sort of not being active in free agency, and then there was this, you know, why didn't they go get Earl Thomas? Well, because, I mean, he's a 30-year-old costing $14 million a year. That's why they go get him. And they weren't even really close to signing him. You know, it's funny because I read a report about Eric Berry coming to visit the Cowboys today, which he's at the Star in Frisco today, visiting with the Cowboys, so we'll see. But it was like after the Cowboys missed on Earl Thomas, and it was like, but they didn't. The Chiefs missed on Earl Thomas, right? I mean, Earl Thomas told BaltimoreRavens.com that, you know, he was going to sign with the Chiefs on a one-year deal at $12 million. That's what he told the Baltimore Ravens. So the Cowboys weren't anywhere close to that. So the Cowboys weren't really ever in the discussion for Earl Thomas, which you may be upset with or disagree with. But like, it's funny that I saw an article that was like, well, the Cowboys missed on Earl Thomas. No, they didn't. They didn't miss. You have to take a shot to miss. They didn't miss. They didn't take their shot. They were not interested in Earl Thomas. And who knows what number they would have been interested in. Would it have been $10 million? Would it have been, you know, $9 million? Whatever it was, Cowboys were not interested in paying for a 30-year-old who they believe is probably past his prime at, you know, more than 10, 12, 11, 12 million bucks a year. So the number one thing to look at is what I have up on screen here. And this is from Danny Phantom from Blogging the Boys. He does a great job. And, you know, you remember a couple of years ago, the Giants won free agency, and I don't need this light. That's weird. I can just, there we go. Okay. That's better. You remember years ago in free agency when the Giants just absolutely killed it. They signed Olivier Vernon, and they signed Damon Harrison, and right. I mean, now you look at this, and obviously Odell was already on their team, but this is tons of dead money that they're going to be paying players against the cap. I mean, that's 30-some million right there in dead money. So they have 30 million in contracts for players that aren't going to be playing for their team. Okay, this is the issue that you get into when you play the big contract game in free agency. And I think the way to look at this, and this is, there are many ways in which the Cowboys are zigging with the rest of the league zagging. Right, like we've talked about the approach in terms of running the football versus versus a pass-heavy, pass-oriented NFL. The Cowboys are kind of zigging with their run-oriented offense in a pass-happy NFL. That's something I don't exactly think is the right approach. But this is one area in building through the draft and then not being active in the opening sort of days of free agency, where I agree with the zig that the Cowboys are doing to the rest of the league zag, right? Like the Cowboys and Patriots are seemingly the only teams that have not been very active in the first couple of days of free agency. And with the Patriots, it's obvious because they win a bunch of Super Bowls, it's the right move. But for the Cowboys, signing players in free agency is risky. Whether you're signing Earl Thomas or Tyrann Mathieu or Eric Berry or somebody else, there's a lot of risk involved. And I think, the Cowboys would rather take the risk with lower-priced guys than be saddled on a long-term contract with risky players that are going to cost tons of money against the cap. And even if they play to that potential, best-case scenario, you're still having your cap, ripped to shreds by players that then they're going to have to make hard decisions in terms of players that you acquire through the draft. And that's what the Cowboys want to do. They want to draft well, develop, and then take those players and then reward them with new contracts. And at the end of the day, again, you could disagree with the Cowboys' approach. They should probably be more active, or many think that they should be more active in free agency. I think it's risky either way. I'd rather go with the highly motivated, shorter-term contracts the Cowboys have been able to finagle than a long-term, high-money commitment to the high-priced free agents. Again, both are with risk. There's tons of risk involved in both of these, whether you play free agency and sign big-time players or whether you don't and you play the game the Cowboys play. There's risk involved in doing both. I would rather, again, the approach that Parcells implemented years and years ago, which is don't overpay for guys that are going to be happy with the contract they're getting, underpay for guys that are going to be upset and motivated to outperform those contracts. And then the second piece to that is, and then if let's say the Cowboys are able to get a trade and come to some sort of financial agreement with the Dolphins on Robert Quinn. Well, I mean, he just has 1 year left on his contract. So if they do that, he plays for the Cowboys next year. They're probably not going to get him to a long-term contract. He's going to be motivated to get that contract. And then if he does walk and take, and sign big-time money somewhere else in free agency next year, the Cowboys get a compensatory pick because of it. So, this is the way that smart teams are playing the modern salary cap. It doesn't sell tickets. It's not great for marketing, and fans are going to be upset. But the reality is, it's hard to disagree with the talent that the Cowboys have amassed in recent history through the draft and then through hitting it on low-priced free agents. You look at Terrell McClain and Antoine Woods, and just go on and on. I mean, even Ernie Sims years ago at the linebacking spot, right? Like just a lot of guys that they've hit on that have outperformed what the Cowboys signed them to. And, if you sign a bunch of guys at that, you're not going to hit on all of them. But if you hit on one or two, now you've got guys that are drastically outperforming their contracts. Whereas if you sign a bunch of guys to long-term, high-money, high-dollar free agent contracts, you're going to basically have a guy that's comfortable because he's got that contract now. He doesn't have to exactly, a lot of guys change the way they approach the game and perform after they're paid. So the Cowboys would rather at least, do that to their own guys and run the risk of those guys not having the same motivation than go out and bring in new guys they don't exactly know and aren't part of their program and system. Again, to me, I think the Cowboys roster is really good and talented. Could they improve? Of course they could. But in terms of stacking up against the rest of the NFL. They've got tons of talent. The thing that's holding the Cowboys back is their coaching. All right, I'm Ari Temkin. This is Showtime on Phantom. Again, hard to disagree, in my opinion, with the Cowboys' approach. I think it's the right approach. I think it is the perfect zig to the rest of the league zag. Everybody's overpaying for players. There's major risk involved in overpaying. The Cowboys are taking the other side of the risky approach in terms of, we're getting guys that are maybe more injury prone or have suffered more injuries, maybe don't have that same production, but you switch them to a new system, and all of a sudden now they've got great production, right? Like, there's risk involved there, but at least there's not risk in terms of the dollar amount associated with it, just risk in terms of having not fortified positions that you think you have in free agency. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Hit the share button if you have not yet already. I'm seeing lots of shares, so I appreciate everybody for doing that. Just trying to get to some of the comments as well. Make sure to hit up the comments and tell me what you think. Devano Norton, Coney Ely, laughing. Agreed. I mean, you're right. For every Antoine Woods, there's a Coney Ely. You're absolutely right. For every Ernie Sims, there's a Nolan Carroll. It's not without flaw. I mean, but the same is true on the opposite side. You sign a guy to a big long-term contract, and even if they perform, Olivier Vernon wasn't bad. He was just too expensive, and obviously they have the dead money, and they traded him for Kevin Zeitler, so they would have happily kept Olivier Vernon, but now they've improved their offensive line. But the point being, there's risk involved in both sides. So wouldn't you rather take the risk on the short-term, no money? I mean, these are low risks in terms of the money associated and the contracts associated, but obviously the risk there is you haven't really exactly fortified positions that you maybe thought you had fortified without that. Devano, is it Devano Norton? Devano? Ari, say we sign Barry Quinn. How does that change our draft strategy? Well, I'll ask you, what do you think? Should it change the Cowboys draft strategy? I would guess you sign Eric Berry and you sign and you trade for Robert Quinn, and my guess is you're still looking at drafting pass rushers. You're still looking at drafting a safety. But I think it gives you more flexibility in terms of what which positions are priority and priorities. But again, this is not, we can look at all the positives. We can look at all of the positive stories that have come through, the Cowboys taking this approach. But there's also guys that didn't work out. There's tons of guys that didn't work out. And I think, that's a great point that Devano Norton brought up, right? I mean, Coney Ely was the same kind of guy last year, low risk. And how did he work out? Not well, right? But the more you're not going to hit on every lottery ticket, but the more lottery tickets you amass, the greater chance you have at hitting. And by the way, I think this is the Cowboys going all in to a certain degree, right? Like in years past, the moves they've made in free agency, Devano Norton. So I was off. Albert Avalos is Ziggy Ansah. No, that's probably still too rich for the Cowboys' blood. They're going to look at some of these sort of, Robert Quinn, Eric Berry type guys, but even probably last year they weren't even looking at these kind of guys. So this is they're going all in. Lance Bell says priority sign D-Law. Sure, and I know that's a priority for the Cowboys. And look, I think the Cowboys have in their mind what number it's going to take. So I think the way that they're going about amassing players, building their roster, they have in mind how much they're going to have to pay D-Law. They also have in mind how much they think they're going to have to pay Dak. Like they have accounted for all of this, and I think that's why they aren't going out and extending themselves in free agency, which again I think is the right approach. I think it's the right approach. I think the biggest flaw with the Cowboys has nothing to do with roster construction, but you've watched this show before and you know that that's how I feel. The biggest flaw for the Cowboys has nothing to do with the way they build their roster. That's just my opinion of it. Devano Norton says we should focus on building our D-line. I'm also, big on continuing to build on offense. I think the Cowboys need to improve upon their 22nd ranked offensive numbers last year in terms of scoring. But yeah, I'd be for building prioritizing the draft and free agency, quite frankly, on the D-line and offense. Those are the two positions. Offense, obviously, more broad than defensive line, but those are the two areas I think that the Cowboys could stand for improvements in personnel. Okay, so again, I like the Cowboys' approach. I think it's the right approach. I think it's the right zig when the rest of the league is zagging. You may disagree. It doesn't mark it, and it doesn't stand out a lot, but I think too often times teams sign free agents that they end up regretting. It's too much money to take such a high risk. The Cowboys would rather take less of a risk in terms of monetary compensation and not have bad contracts with tons of money or long-term deals hanging over their heads. All right. The main topic today is kind of what we talked about yesterday, which is, do the Cowboys have a championship level roster? But we'll kind of take this to the next level because since we talked yesterday, the Cowboys signed somebody. Hey, Kerry Hyder from Austin, Texas. They also now reportedly have Eric Berry visiting the Star in Frisco, and Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn is also visiting the Star in Frisco today, which is interesting. Devano Norton says that was because of pedestrian play calling. We were ranked 22nd. Don't think it was all play calling. I think it was the philosophical approach, the run first, run heavy team. That was part of it, because again, passing is more efficient than running. So if you pass more times than you run, you're going to score more points over the course of the season. Hashtag math. Okay, so let's start with Robert Quinn, because I think there's a lot of confusion over what the situation is with Robert Quinn. So Robert Quinn is a talented but declining pass rusher who's spent the majority of his year with the St. Louis Rams. He was an absolute monster in, I think it was 2013. 2013, he was 23 years old. He had 19 sacks and 7 forced fumbles. Okay? He was a monster in 2013. And then he didn't do much. I mean, he had 10.5 sacks the following year and had 5 forced fumbles, which is a really good season. But then 5 sacks in 2015, 4 sacks in 2016. Then it was traded to 8.5 sacks for the Rams in 2017, and then was traded to the Dolphins in the offseason last year. Had 6.5 sacks for the Dolphins, but had tons of money on his contract. So he's going to count $13 million against the cap this year for the Dolphins. So, but they could have released him and just had $1 million in dead money. So why don't they release him? Well, they ended up paying him his $1 million roster bonus so that they can now shop him, kind of what they did with Ryan Tannehill, which is shopping him maybe to see if they can get a pick or picks out of it, and then and then potentially sort of still eat some of the money, to make the contract that he'd get more palatable. I'm not really sure how much the Cowboys would be willing to pay him, but I would venture a guess it'd be significantly less than he's going to make, in terms of the $12-13 million. I also think the compensation won't be a ton. It might be, trading a draft pick, or it might be, just trading draft slots. Maybe you swap your third-round selection for their third-round selection, right? Like the Cowboys could very well do that. So, I think the bigger thing here to look at is how much money will it cost them. I think the draft compensation is what it is, and I think the Cowboys would be happy to part with whatever the Dolphins want, and I'm sure it'll be within reason. The question then becomes, okay, so if you figure out the right amount in terms of draft compensation, how much money will he cost? Because the Dolphins obviously would like to pay for him to go away if they can make the draft situation right. Robert Quinn can still be a really high-level player, but he's not worth, in any capacity, the $13 million or $12 million he's going to get against the cap. Which, again, illustrates how difficult it is to sign players to long-term contracts, right? Because he signed a big deal after the 2017 season, and paid him $11 million last year, and now $13 million this year. So, it's tough, even with a guy like Robert Quinn, who's been an absolute monster. That by the time the contract ends, you're looking at a guy that's probably not worth that amount of money that you're gonna have to pay him. All right, so how do you all feel about Robert Quinn? Also, I see people talking about Crawford. Let's not be too quick to judge Crawford. He wasn't arrested. Keep that in mind. Tyrone Crawford was alleged to be in a barroom brawl in Panama City, Florida, in which he allegedly pushed 2 police officers. Now, if that doesn't get you arrested, there's a lot there that needs to be sort of deciphered. So, again, Tyrone Crawford was allegedly involved in a bar fight, according to TMZ, in which he pushed multiple police officers. However, he was not arrested. Okay? Again, he pushed 2 police officers and was not arrested. What does that say? That says there's a lot going on there in terms of Tyrone Crawford. So we'll see. I see people are like, "Oh, he was in a bar fight, idiot. He's gonna, the Cowboys are gonna lose him for the first 3 games." I wouldn't create any. He wasn't arrested. If he had been arrested, then you could probably make a pretty good idea that he's going to be lost for 3 games at least. But he wasn't arrested. Jesse Murphy says Crawford didn't even throw a punch if you watched the video. Again, he allegedly pushed multiple cops and was not arrested for it. So because that happened, like you'd think, given in most circumstances that happens, he's going to be arrested. He wasn't, so there seems to be a lot more going on there. Dylan Smiley says Quinn's a good addition if they can get him on the cheap. Jerry Tucker says Zeke wasn't arrested either. Yeah, let's not get too. I mean, I'm just saying if there are very few circumstances, and rightfully so, if you push police officers, you're not going to get arrested. Okay, this seems to be one of them. I mean, trying to compare that with the Zeke situation, I mean, they're two completely different things. What I'm saying is, if he pushed 2 police officers and wasn't arrested, then clearly what happened was well beyond what he did. And his involvement in it, minimal at best, since, again, he wasn't arrested. Johnny Wood says, I seen the video, that wasn't no damn push. Whatever it was, he was forced into 2 police officers. Whatever it was, he didn't get arrested for it. So I think everybody can just rest assured that even though it sounds really bad, it's probably not as bad as it sounds. So I did want to address it, and I appreciate everybody for bringing it up. But that's the Tyrone Crawford situation. So okay, so for Quinn to me is it's a no-brainer. As long as you can get that money down. And look, if he's owed basically at this point $12 million, and the Cowboys can pay him $6 million, and the Dolphins are on the hook for the other $6 million, I'd say make the deal. So we'll see. Now, I also think, the Cowboys are probably not going to be signing him to a long-term deal. So I know there was rumors that he's also going to visit with the Saints. So it kind of depends on if there's another team that's like, yeah, we'll make this trade for you, and we're going to split the bill with the Dolphins or whatever, and then we want to sign you to this contract extension. I think these are components of it, and I don't know that the Cowboys would be willing to do that. If I'm the Cowboys, all I want to do is pay you half of the $12 million you're owed, put the Dolphins on the hook for the other $6 million, give up minimal draft capital, if anything, either switch spots or give up a late round pick, and then take my chances with Robert Quinn on a contract year. That's what I would do. I would not make any long-term commitments to this guy because his play is declining, his production is declining, but he's a great guy to have in that rotation without question. Chris Istries says Crawford and Taco can manage the defensive end position, save money to pay for our own, and build with the draft. Taco? Wow, you all have a lot more confidence in Taco than I do. But granted, I never really had confidence in Taco Charlton. I thought he was a bust the moment he was drafted. So there's that. That's on the Dallas Cowboys America's team page. Shout out to all you watching there. Make sure to hit the share button if you have not yet already. I am Ari Temkin, and this is Showtime on Phantom. You can catch me here every day, 12 to 1, talking Cowboys or all of Dallas sports. You can also catch me on 105.3 The Fan as I host there. I was on all last week with the KNC Masterpiece. And then, of course, every morning, 7 to 10 a.m., is Sirius XM, Big 12 Radio, Channel 375. So shout out to all of you watching and streaming and listening across all these different pages and platforms and channels. The Dallas Cowboys Report, John Patrick says, I like the idea of Robert Quinn coming to Dallas. Chris Thomas says, do you think we need to get an offensive lineman because the ones we have aren't getting younger? Pierre Baptiste says, hope we sign Quinn and Barry. For the O-line, yeah, absolutely. This team can certainly use improvements along the offensive line. However, I'm not sure how big of a priority it will be in this draft, given defensive line I think is still a priority, given wide receivers still a priority, given safety is probably a priority. So we'll see if the Cowboys look at offensive linemen in the draft. I do think, we'll see. The two guys that I'm completely confident will be playing at a all-pro type level are Travis Frederick and Zach Martin. Zach Martin, obviously, you might be thinking, Travis Frederick, really? He just missed a whole year. I think Travis will be fine. Given what he's coming back from, it's just a matter of building his strength back up and work ethic, and these are things I'll never question with Travis Frederick. So if you're around the guy, you know that he has the things that he'd need in order to get back to where he was, you know he can do that. So I have no doubt in my mind that Travis Frederick will get back next year to being an all-pro type player. So now here's the question. Will Connor Williams improve? Will they let Joe Looney compete with Connor Williams at that interior spot? Will Lyle Collins improve at right tackle? They brought back Cam Fleming. So they have really good competition, I think, along the offensive line. The biggest question is Tyron Smith. He held up last year, but he wasn't great, right? He didn't miss a bunch of games, but he wasn't great. Had his worst season, and again, he's an old 28, so he will continue to decline, which is sad but true for Tyron Smith. So, yeah, I mean, they could certainly look at a tackle in the draft. Certainly. I think that's more than interior of the offensive line, an area where they can improve. But I think, the priorities are probably, well, in my opinion, the priorities are probably defensive tackle, defensive line, defensive tackle, defensive end. And then, if I'm being honest, wide receiver, offensive line, though I think the Cowboys will put safety in there as well, probably corner too. So we'll see. The Cowboys, I think the thing about what they're doing now is this gives them the flexibility. Let's say they sign a Randall Cobb. Let's say they sign an Eric Berry. Let's say they sign a Robert Quinn, right? Now all of a sudden you have more flexibility in the draft because you've at least brought in bodies to compete. And even though these guys may not stay healthy, at the very least you can be confident and comfortable that you've signed guys as opposed to having holes that need to be filled because we don't even have players. We don't even have bodies at those positions. And here's my question to everybody watching this. TJ Carpenter says, questions. 2, do you already think the Cowboys can improve before firing Jason Garrett? Questions 2, do you already think the Cowboys can improve before firing? Yes. I think I know what you're asking, but I'm not entirely sure what you're asking, TJ. Can they improve before firing Jason Garrett? Sure. Look, I think there's a chance that the changes needed for Jason Garrett in terms of being more flexible, not being married to being a run-first coach. Like I think that can change, and I think if Kellen Moore can sort of change that, but he obviously has to have a willingness to change. So yeah, I think the Cowboys can improve, and the Cowboys can get to where the Cowboys say they need to get to keep Jason Garrett with his job. The likelihood of that happening, though, I guess that's the question. But yeah, I mean, I think they have the talent to be championship caliber. I do, because nobody is without flaw in the NFL. Every team has holes. TJ, you know that, and so I probably thought LVE was too. No, actually, I loved the pick of Leighton Vander Esch. I mean, the thing about Taco was, like, and this is what I go back to. Like, before the draft, all we heard from Michigan out of Taco was didn't have a work ethic. Entitled. Like, if we heard that, the Cowboys clearly heard that. And if that came from, like, think about this. The place that he went, Michigan was saying this about him. Like, think about that. So no, I mean, Phil, you can go back and I don't know that I was streaming then, but you can listen to the radio shows I did then, and I loved the Vander Esch pick. So I will happily tell you when I'm wrong and when I'm right. I was absolutely correct about Leighton Vander Esch, as many as people that didn't like it. No, I loved it. I loved it because that was a position they clearly needed to go after that they hadn't really done much to improve with young players. So yeah, no, Taco I didn't like because Taco, we heard about Taco that he was entitled and didn't have a great work ethic, which, like, I'm not drafting anybody that I hear that about. And the Cowboys clearly heard that because of people that, like, you talk to anybody out of Michigan, that's what they're going to tell you. That's a red flag. Tim Hasty, Ari, you want Dak passing 30-plus times a game? You keep mentioning passing more. Yes, I do. Absolutely. Let's see here. What else we got? Okay, so here's my question, everybody watching this. If the Cowboys, so they signed Kerry Hyder, they signed Christian Covington, then they re-signed Tavon Austin, they re-signed Justin March Lillard, they re-signed Cam Fleming. So let's say they sign Eric Berry. Would people be happy with this offseason if that's all they do? What would it take? Do they have to bring in all three of these guys, Berry, Randall Cobb, and Robert Quinn, in conjunction with the moves they've already made, plus the draft? I mean, where is everybody in terms of what will make Cowboys fans happy? TJ says, franchise tag, Ari, do you like it or hate it? I mean, the issue is players don't like it, but they collectively bargained it, which, it's the problem of the Players Association. They just don't have a very strong union because it's a numbers game. There's 53 players in a roster and 32 teams. So it's a lot easier to organize a bunch of, it's a lot easier to organize and get what you want when there's 30 teams and only 12 players in a roster. Just think about that, right? The NBA has 30 teams with 12 players in a roster. What's 30 times 12? So that's 360 players, okay? As opposed to 53 times 32, which is basically 1,700, right? So it's a difference of, I mean, that's a significant difference. So that's why the NFL and the Players Association and the NFL have a worse deal, because it's just a numbers game. The more players you have, the thing is, in the NBA, the players have the power because they have the most money, and they have the longer term careers, and they have the most say in success. One individual player has that much say in success. In the NFL, the majority of guys aren't making what like the vast majority of guys are making league minimum or a little bit over. So when you have that, you've got guys that are going to have to sign off on bad deals. Otherwise, you're going to get to long negotiations that are drawn out. And so I wonder if the franchise tag is one that the owners would be willing to give in on when it comes to the next negotiation of the CBA, but I'm not sure. I do know that they probably will give up the weed thing, which, like, that's an easy concession they can make that won't really matter, that players will feel like is a victory. Let's see here. Phil Ackley says, I didn't know much about Taco. I'm from Idaho, so I knew about LV, so I apologize for putting words where they didn't belong. No worries. No, I mean, and look, I didn't know tons about Leighton Vander Esch, but I did like when it comes to the draft, what I've always said is just trust the guys that have, trust the guys that give you that you should trust, right? Like if you root for an organization that's bad at drafting, then you're probably not gonna put trust in they've drafted the right players. So if you look back and say this regime has 2 bad drafts, then it's easy to criticize and be critical of drafts. For the Cowboys, it's the opposite. You sort of have to have faith because of how good they've been at drafting. The thing with Taco was, even though there was the whole component of everybody hearing that he was entitled and didn't have a work ethic. So it was just so clearly a bad pick, and especially it's made even worse by the fact that TJ Watt was on the board, and he was so clearly the better player. But for Vander Esch, it was, 1, trust in this organization that's drafted exceedingly well, and 2, I think a very important position. And not just that, but you look at the amount of linebackers, especially, Mike linebackers that were taken in the first round of that draft, gives you a pretty good indication of how important that position is, with needing a guy that could play well in coverage, and that again played to Leighton Vander Esch's strengths, which obviously, as we saw this season, just became better and better. But playing, playing 7-man football like he played, he's playing more of the safety linebacker position, better in coverage, smoother hips to be able to turn and cover. Those are things that are really important for a modern linebacker to be able to do. Albert Avila says, you get a yacht, and you get a yacht, and you get a yacht. Anthony Galashaw says, I think that Dallas should have signed D-Law to an extension. This is causing problems for us to move forward with anything else. I don't agree with that. I think if the Cowboys had already signed DeMarcus Lawrence, they'd still be going through this process that they're going through right now. I don't think that they go out and all of a sudden now, spend tons of money on all these different positions. I think the Cowboys know how much they're going to pay DeMarcus Lawrence. Cowboys are going to pay DeMarcus Lawrence. I have no doubt in my mind. I have no doubt in my mind that DeMarcus Lawrence will get signed and will be with the Cowboys on opening day. I have no doubt in my mind. No doubt. Zero doubt. It's going to be a process to get there, but I have zero doubt in my mind that he'll be there on opening day when the Cowboys kick it off. Sean Moore says if they're going to trade him, need to do it soon. I have little doubt in my mind that the Dallas Cowboys will have DeMarcus Lawrence wearing number 90 for them on opening day in 2019. So in terms of the other moves, I think they understand how much they're going to have to pay DeMarcus, and so they're making moves based on what they believe to be the right number. Charles Grau wants to know, Ari, do you really think Dak is the answer? Well, I mean, Tom Brady's the answer. As I've stated, I believe that Dak Prescott at present, you could probably put him as high as 11th in the NFL in terms of ranking quarterbacks, and probably as low as 15th. That's where I believe he is. He is at worst average. But I do think it's fair to look at other factors, like he just finished year 3 he lost a huge percentage of his production from the year before. Like, I think last year set him up to fail because they went into the season without a number one, and Scott Linehan felt like that was a good idea, and it clearly wasn't. So you didn't have a number one. You were trying to make him work this really weird, convoluted offense. Like, I think he was in the wrong offense that didn't really leverage his skill set and doesn't really leverage like the modern rules. Plus, without a number one, he was in a horrible spot to fail. And I think that's what happened. They had the 30th ranked scoring offense. And I think a lot of the taking sacks was indecision by him and sort of not really knowing what to do in the confines of the offense. I think it was trying to make Dak Prescott too one-dimensional. You are a passer. Be a passer on this play. You are a runner. Be a runner on this play. Whereas I think you look at most of the modern offenses, they're more flexible, multiple. There's more options within each play. And I think that probably plays greater to Dak's strengths. Now, does he now become a top 5 quarterback in the NFL next year with a new offense? No, probably not. So then you get into the whole, so what do you do long term with him if he's, good enough to be top 10, but not good enough to be top 5? So, I mean, to say, is he the answer or isn't he the answer? I mean, I think he's the answer today because there's nobody out there that gives you better production and better ability from that position where the Cowboys stand right now, like not even close. The Cowboys cannot upgrade that position in any capacity whatsoever between now and the start of the regular season. I mean, just look at the Redskins brought in Case Keenum. Look at how much money. Look at how much money the Vikings paid Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is awful. He turns the ball over so much, and they gave him $80 million. So you start to see that if you don't have the right guy, now you're overpaying for bad guys. Sean Moore says, and the fact that Dak is very inconsistent in finding open receivers and delivering the football with accuracy with any consistency. 60% completion percentage, top 10 in the NFL this year. Leah Edwards says, watching. Lexus Ortiz says, signing D-Law would make me happy. Christopher Kuhn says, we can go after wide receivers in the draft. Go ahead and sign Berry and defensive linemen now. Look, I think Eric Berry's first visit in free agency is to the Cowboys. It's today. My guess is he'll visit multiple places, and I don't know what the money situation is with him. There's probably teams that'd be willing to outbid the Cowboys. And look, for a guy that's played 3 games in the last 2 years, I wouldn't blame the Cowboys for passing on Berry if the price were too high. So it depends. But yeah, I mean, I'd love the signing of Eric Berry, and again, the idea of, because I know some people are like, well, if the contract's right, like I've seen. I think it was Jeff Kavanaugh, my buddy Jeff Kavanaugh from 105 Through the Fan, who put on Facebook, if the Cowboys sign Eric Berry, you would think ... And somebody was like, people were like, if it's the right money, if the price is right. Like, we're talking about the Cowboys here. Of course, if it's for the right money. Of course, if the price is right. Yeah, that's a given. So now that we've gotten there, I think then it's a good signing because we should know that if the Cowboys are willing to sign Eric Berry, it's going to be for the right price. We don't have to say that. It's going to be because this is the Cowboys. They are very, very, very frugal in terms of spending money in the salary cap, which I believe is the right approach. People that think they're cheaping out, I just don't. I think this is how you build a team long-term in the NFL. Through the draft and then through, again, finding guys that are underpaid relative to the market and then getting them to outperform their contracts. The NFL, the reason the draft is so important is because if you get any production out of guys that you've drafted, they've outperformed their value. Okay? That's what the NFL is all about. It's about getting guys to outperform their contracts, getting greater production from them relative to the average would be at that position, right? And relative to salary cap. So, Brandon Carr was a pretty good player for the Cowboys, has been a pretty good player for the Ravens. Not worth, but where he's getting paid under expectations relative to value. Had he been on a short-term, low-money deal, it's a better contract, right? So the value of a player depends on how much money they get paid. So Brandon Carr is outperforming his contract with the Ravens, but underperformed his contract with the Cowboys. Eric Sharp says, by the way, you're significantly better than a lot of guys on 105 Through the Fan. Well, I appreciate you saying that, but they're all my friends, so they're And look, it's a really good lineup with great shows that they're great. That the station's great. Those guys are great. And I don't just say that because I'm on the station. I'm friends with those guys. Quite honestly, like I think a lot of sports talk radio is bad. But the city of Dallas is really lucky to have two really good stations that are top 5 in the market. Like, just to give you an idea, and this is kind of off the beaten path, but just indulge me for a moment here and hit that share button while I do this, and I'll get back to your Cowboys questions. And by the way, I'm asking you, if you can, who are we signing here? Thumbs up for Eric Berry, heart emoji for Cobb, laughing emoji for Robert Quinn. If you can only sign one, who are you signing? And then make sure to post in the comments who you've decided the Cowboys should sign. Do me that solid. Who should they sign? Eric Berry, Randall Cobb, Robert Quinn. And tell me in the comments of those 3 who you'd sign, and then I'll tell you in a moment who I would sign. And I bet you it differs from what everybody's going to say here. So William White says Clayton Gathers. So he'd go outside the box. And that's fine too. You want to sign Gathers. You want to sign Glover Quinn. I said Quinn. It could be Glover Quinn or it could be Robert Quinn. So, in most cities in America, most sports talk radio stations aren't going to be top 5 in terms of just all stations in the market, right? So music and talk or whatever it is. Most sports talk in most cities in America are not top 5 of. When I'm talking about top 5, I mean in terms of like men 18 plus in those markets, right? Most of the time, 95% of the time in every city, top 5 stations are music stations. Dallas has 2 top 5 stations. That's like, think about that. Most cities don't have 1 top 5 sports talk station. Dallas has 2. So, gives you an idea of just how good sports talk is in this city. And obviously, I'll mention 105 through the Fan because I work there, and I won't mention the other station, but you all know what other station I'm talking about. It's also a good station. The Ticket's a good station. I prefer the Fan because I work at the Fan, and I like those guys a lot, and it's, in my opinion, a better station, but the Ticket is a really, really good station too. So there's that. And by the way, I used to work in San Antonio for ESPN San Antonio, and both the Ticket and ESPN San Antonio are bottom 5 stations of the market. Like, way down there. And in San Antonio, they say, well, it's not a good reflection of the market. It's what you say when you're not top 5. Patrick Prescott says Quinn easily. Jesse Rojas says Quinn. And then he says Robert Quinn. Anthony Galashaw says, but for the right price. It's the Cowboys, Anthony. Trust me when I say that any of these guys signing would be for the right price if the Cowboys sign them. Sean Moore says because of the Cowboys, ... not the talk. I mean, they've had the Cowboys for years, and the ratings have now, within the last couple of years, been at that level. Daniel Lozano says, what have I missed? Just me talking about throwing the ball more. Daniel, I'm just kidding. I'm joking with you, buddy. Because I know Daniel and I argue all the time about throwing versus running. Even though I'm right, Daniel, I still love you. Okay, so out of these 3, the guy I'm signing, this guy right here. Yeah, because I think offense is more important than defense. And because if the Cowboys hit camp and their receiving core is what it is, and maybe they've added a slot receiver in the draft and they have Cedric Wilson, I just don't think they've improved enough in their receiving core as much as they need to. To me, there is no more underappreciated position in the NFL than receivers because of the importance of throwing relative to the amount of points you're going to score. So a guy that like Randall Cobb that has great experience playing inside and playing outside. He's obviously was a quarterback at Kentucky many years ago. So I mean he's a guy to me with tremendous value. Does he have injury concerns? Sure, but none of these. I mean, all of these guys have injury concerns at their age. Where we're talking about right now, all of these guys have injury concerns. So Devon Norton says bourbon in that cup. Not yet, but I do like me some bourbon. Jesse Truitt says Cobb protects the team if Cooper or Hearns goes down. Kick Cobb outside, slide Hearns inside, and there's not a significant drop-off. However, if I take Quinn in this scenario, do the depth issues looming there? Yeah. I mean, if certainly Cobb helps you. Cobb's ability to play inside and outside gives you flexibility if one of those guys goes down. Now, it's most likely that Cobb would be the guy that goes down. But I just think let's forget about, like, we have to sort of operate as if everybody will be healthy, because if we say the whole somebody goes down game, if we play that game, then we can play that on and on, like we can play that game forever, right? So just assuming everybody's healthy, I mean, to me, you insert Cobb at that slot receiver position, plus perhaps you even draft somebody at that position, because there seems to be a lot of guys, that are there for the taking for the Cowboys in the second round, third round, or fourth round at that position. I'm fine with that, right? I'd rather a rookie and Cedric Wilson be sort of competing. To me, I'd rather Allen Hurns not make this team. I think the Cowboys can do better at $6 million. I'd rather spend that $6 million on Robert Quinn, because that's the reality of it. If the Cowboys are on the hook for none of that money right now. I think it's $1 million. If the Cowboys cut Allen Hurns today, they'd get $5 million back in cap money and lose $1 million. If he's on the team when the season starts, he counts $6 million against the cap. If they cut him the day before the season starts, when they cut the roster down to 53, he counts $1 million in dead money and $5 million in free money. To me, I'd rather go out and get Cobb at whatever price, again, within reason. If the Cowboys are doing it, it's within reason, and then use the $5 million to maybe tell Miami, hey, why don't you split this with me? We'll take Robert Quinn for $5-6 million, and then I'm using the money for Allen Hurns on Robert Quinn. I just have greater faith in Robert Quinn making a significantly larger impact on the 2019-2020 Cowboys than Allen Hurns. I'm just not big on Allen Hurns. Devon Norton likes Deebo Samuel. The only reason why they picked up the option on Allen Hurns is because there's no reason not to. Because they could cut him today or cut him after training camp, and it's still the same. Daniel Lozano says, we need Quinn. We can't just throw bodies in there and expect to get a pass rush. Well, I mean, you can more so if you've got DeMarcus Lawrence on one side, but I get your point. I agree there. Charles Groves says, do you think that might be what they're doing? What do you mean? Let Hurns walk and then take that money and put it towards Quinn? I'm not sure. And again, I think Quinn sort of has the control over where he's going to be traded to, because the compensation is not going to be much of a difference. So the compensation's negligible. Compensation, I mean, you're talking about either the Cowboys giving up a late draft pick or probably switching spots in a round. That's what I'm guessing will end up happening. But I saw the Saints were interested too. So if the Saints jump in and say, but we're going to give you a long-term contract, I just don't think the Cowboys are willing to, nor should they be, in order to get Robert Quinn here. If I'm the Cowboys, I want him on I want him at half price. The Dolphins are paying the other half, and I give up whatever I give up. We switch spots in the third round, or whatever it is, and I'd rather. And this plays to the Cowboys how they build their roster. I'd rather a hungry player in a contract year looking to get that, another big time payday, versus a guy that I've just signed to a long-term extension and I'm not really sure if his play is declining because of age or other factors. Quincy Relaford says, nope, they won't sign Quinn or Barry. They'll sign elsewhere. Why even ask? All right. Quincy Relaford is very optimistic about their ability to sign Robert Quinn or Eric Berry. Patrick Prescott says, rather trade for Quinn, draft Isabella or Deebo at 58. I'd rather have Quinn, Randall Cobb, and then get Deebo in the third round. I don't know that. I mean, although he'll probably be gone before 58. Deebo Samuel. I think Andy Isabella is the one that's interesting. Isabella could be available in the third round. I think second round is probably too high for Andy Isabella. I'd just probably still rather take a defensive end at that position, right? So if the Cowboys sign Randall Cobb, make a trade for Robert Quinn, and then now they've got flexibility at 58, they could potentially look at slot receiver. They could potentially look at tight end. They could potentially look at defensive end. Robert Anchetta says Abram at 58. I don't think he's there at 58. Daniel Lozano says Quinn and Cobb. I'm in agreement with you, Ari. What the bleep? LOL first. Just a question, everyone chill out, but how much trade value does D-Law have? No, Charles, I don't think I mean, a lot of people, I think, are asking that question, and I'd say a decent amount. Does he have Khalil Mack type trade value in terms of 2 first-round picks? Probably not, but you know, you can get a first-round pick for him. And I'm sure the Cowboys are entertaining that, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the Cowboys are looking for. I mean, look, I think the Cowboys will end up signing him to a long-term deal. I do. And I think he will be with the Cowboys. I think he'll be with the Cowboys opening day. Porky Zapata gives me the thumbs up and the heart emoji, meaning he wants them to sign Eric Berry and Randall Cobb. So he's out on Quinn, I guess. Quincy Relaford says, Jerry's just window shopping. We see the same game each offseason. Dallas would surprise me if they were serious. But the same game that we see is finding value in players that are undervalued. And this is kind of what we have been talking about all show today. That's the right approach. It's the right approach. There's too many bad contracts that are signed in the opening week of free agency. Like, we just have, like, how many contracts that were signed last week will the teams that signed them be regretting by the time that contract is up? My guess is a lot. A lot. Like 80% of the contracts that were signed last week, I'm guessing the teams that signed them will regret them by the time the contract is up. David Puneo, what's the latest on Cobb? Cobb visited the Cowboys yesterday. He left, obviously, without a deal, which means that he's either going elsewhere to look at what's out there. I mean, he's going to survey the landscape. We'll see if the Cowboys will get him. The Cowboys are not going to offer the most money. Maybe that's what Quincy's saying. They're not going to offer the most money. But it kind of depends on, factors of, if it's a short-term deal and the Cowboys offer this, does now he get a better chance to showcase his skills here than he would in another situation? So there are a lot of factors at play, but I just don't think the Cowboys are going to, they're not going to outbid anybody, and that's kind of their approach. But their approach is they're going to take what they perceive to be less than market value for these players, sign them, and then get them to outperform their value. That is like, again, I cannot stress this enough. The name of the game in the NFL, you're going to be very successful in the NFL if you can consistently get guys to outperform their contracts. So if it's a given that you get rookies that immediately come in and play well, they're out. They're out. If you get rookies that come in and get on the field and get snaps, like Anthony Hitchens is a good example of this. Was Anthony Hitchens a good player? He's average at best, but he played snaps. He's out there, right? So he's gobbling up snaps, which is really important. So you get players like that. Their ability to play is significant because you need players to gobble up those snaps. Availability is important. So healthy players that play on the field that are getting paid X that is less than production, like that's the name of the game here. That's what the Cowboys are doing. It might not be what you agree with, and it might not be what you want because you want them to throw money at the issue, but the issue is the coach. So they can't throw money at the issue right now. Hopefully next offseason they can throw money at Sean Payton. Or if not, then they're throwing money at Jason Garrett because they've just won a Super Bowl. Devon O'Norton, Landon Collins is laughing straight to the bank. Yeah, like Washington, just look at what the Washington Redskins do and do the opposite, and you'll be good. All right, what else we got? Kerry Hyder signed. Cowboys signed Kerry Hyder from Austin LBJ High School. Shout out to Chris Bennett, which is where Ray Jackson from the Fab Five went. LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson High School. Hyder was a pretty good performer at Texas Tech. Played under 3 coaches: Mike Leach, Tommy Tuberville, and Cliff Kingsbury. Was basically an interior defensive lineman. Played close to 300 pounds over the course of his career at Texas Tech. As a true space eater. And then when undrafted free agent, signed with the Jets, caught on with their practice squad, was released, signed with the Lions, caught on with their practice squad, then played and had a really good season. In 2016, he was a pass rusher. He bulked down, got down to, I think, like 265. So he lost like 35 pounds, became a outside pass rusher in a 4-3. Was really productive. Had 9 sacks in 16 games. But even better, he had 8 sacks in 2016, and 7 sacks in 9 games. 8 sacks overall in 2016, but had 7 sacks the first 9 games of the season. So the question is, what happened in the second half where he didn't accumulate as many sacks? But had 7 sacks the first 9 weeks, ended up 2016 with 8 sacks. Career year, and then the Lions change coaches. They bring in Matt Patricia, who's more of a 3-4 hybrid kind of defense. So now a guy that was a tweener coming out of Texas Tech, sort of not a pass rusher, but not a really a in the middle one technique space eater. He finds himself on the outside looking in. Didn't really have a good season last year. Well, first had the Achilles injury, and then last year with Patricia didn't really fit. So I love it. Good move. Here's a guy like Christian Covington, like Tyrone Crawford, like David Irving, can play inside and play outside. And that's, in this scheme, guys that can do that are worth a ton of value. And so I think they brought in Kerry Hyder, who wasn't going to command tons of money in the open market, and thought, whatever the money is, let's make a deal. And he's from Austin. So the Kerry Hyder deal it's a great deal. It's another low risk, potential for high reward type deal. He could end up like Coney Ealy, though I have more confidence that he ends up being a more productive player for this team than Coney Ealy did. Ealy was clearly on the decline, and I mean with Kerry Hyder, he's young and trying to get that big payday, so he's hungry to get that big payday like Antoine Woods was. Same kind of thing, Now, Hyder's had more success than Antoine Woods did prior to coming to the Cowboys. Antoine Woods hadn't even made a team yet. He was a practice squad guy with Tennessee. But Hyder's the guy that you switch him from the 4-3 to the 3-4, back to the 4-3, you're probably going to get the most out of him. Ray Pierce wants to know if they re-sign Antoine Woods. No, Antoine Woods is already under contract this next year. So he's going to cost the Cowboys $750,000 next year. He's going to outperform that value, right? Same thing like Terrell McClain. It's really funny. I was the guy that was like, they need to re-sign Terrell McClain. He's really good. They didn't. They let Washington sign him. What happened? Washington signed him, and a year later they cut him. Ate a bunch of dead money on it. McClain was a really good interior player for them. He was very good, like Antoine Woods. But they weren't going to pay him. They're going to let somebody else make that mistake. And even then, Washington cuts him, and it's like, oh, either the Cowboys are going to bring him back. No, they didn't. The approach works. I'm the stupid one. I thought they should go back and get Terrell McClain. They were like, we got Antoine Woods. We're good. We're fine. We're going to pay Antoine Woods, a little bit over $1 million over 2 seasons, and we're going to get way more production and value from him than we would Terrell McClain. Bye. Jesse Truitt says Quinn, Cobb, and George Iloka upgrades at all areas of need and would be cheap in comparison. Yeah, the thing about Iloka is the Cowboys had opportunity to sign him last year and didn't. Again, the Cowboys saw him. Iloka was released following the Cowboys-Bengals preseason game, and they still didn't bite on it. So, maybe now, Heath sort of played at a level at the end of last year where maybe they feel like an upgrade is more important than it was last year. Maybe that's it, but we'll see. I think if I can only sign one of these 3, I'm signing Cobb, because I love the potential that he brings, and I just think if you're 1, 2, 3, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Randall Cobb, like that's you're throwing more firepower out there. Now, if I could sign 2 of these guys, it's probably going to be this is tough, because I love the upside with Barry, but then there's the reality of he's only played in 3 games in the last 2 years. But he has been a really, really good player. He's, when healthy, one of the best safeties in football, and he's highly motivated because he's only played in 3 games in the last 2 years. So we shall see. But again, here we are. Everybody was upset last week. Cowboys didn't do anything. They kind of sat on their hands in free agency. Everybody was upset. And now all of a sudden, it's like if they signed Cobb or they signed Barry, a week later, everybody looks at this offseason and says it'd be pretty successful. So we shall see. All right, hopefully by this time tomorrow, they will have a little bit more traction. But they did sign Kerry Hyder, and I said the same thing yesterday. Hopefully by this time tomorrow, today, I said this yesterday, we'll have more players to talk about that they've signed. They didn't. They only signed Kerry Hyder, which is a good signing, but it wasn't Randall Cobb or some of the other. Who's the other guy they had in yesterday? Oh, the kid from the Colts. So we'll see. My guess is, though, again, most of the guys are going to leave without a deal because the Cowboys aren't going to, like, the guys that go visit somewhere and then leave with a deal are guys that are getting blown away with money. We know the Cowboys aren't going to do that. So the Cowboys make an offer. They tell them where they think they would fit, what they could do for their careers, blah, 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 blah. Prove it here, and you can go and get paid big-time money. They could go somewhere else where they get that money. So the reason why guys come here and then leave without a deal is because the Cowboys aren't going to blow them away with big money. They're not. They're not. But it's the right approach. Oscar Rogerio says, Cowboys sign all three, Barry, Cobb, and Quinn. Will be an awesome team and more chances at a good run than the Super Bowl. If Crawford gets in trouble, who's starting at right defensive end? Well, two things. As I mentioned earlier, Crawford wasn't arrested. So he allegedly pushed two police officers at a bar fight in Panama City, but wasn't arrested. So I think he won't get in trouble. That's what I think. If he hadn't been arrested, if he does get arrested, then perhaps we're talking about something different. But based on the video that's out there, and then based on the fact that he didn't get arrested, I wouldn't worry too much. But the question remains: who starts opposite DeMarcus Lawrence? Because they want Tyrone Crawford to start at that 3 technique, right? Man, that's a great question. Robert Quinn? I mean, it's not Dorrance Armstrong or Taco Charlton. How about that? How about not Dorrance Armstrong or Taco Charlton? That's who starts at right defensive end. Or I'll just say not Taco Charlton. William White says, if Cobb and Barry are touring other teams, we won't know the answer until later this week. Probably. That's true. Thomas Baker says we need to upgrade some of the wide receivers to help run game past East run second half. The Cowboys need to upgrade their receiving core. I know people are bringing up the Zeke, but it's a completely different situation. It's a completely different situation. I for 100 reasons, and I also like the NFL has become more lax on the personal conduct policy in the last few years. Like there were other players that failed drug tests that didn't face suspensions. I mean, like the Josh Gordon, Randy Gregory, and David Irving was missing drug tests in the year, and they didn't really suspend him. So they kind of allowed these guys certain leeway before they brought down the hammer. So I know people are like, well, neither was Zeke. He wasn't arrested, but it's a completely different set of circumstances. It is. It's not. I mean, there was a pattern of behavior that the NFL didn't like. It's horse bleep. I mean, what was the pattern of behavior? What was it? I mean, I think it really goes back to, the alleged rape from Zeke at college, right? There was a couple of instances with this girl that he was involved with where she alleged sexual assault on him. So it's kind of like they were trying to investigate that. And then he's doing things like he went to a weed shop in Seattle. Big freaking deal. Okay? I mean, we can all agree the Zeke suspension was egregious. At the very least, though, it at least saved Zeke 6 games of wear and tear. It was egregious when it happened. It's over with. It's done with. And I think it was based on a pattern of behavior that the NFL didn't like. It's a joke. Tyrone Crawford's completely different. There's no pattern of behavior here. This is just one situation he was involved with. I just think the context of him not being arrested is probably enough to give us an indication of his involvement in this. Robert Anchetta says, you censor yourself? Sometimes. I don't know. If the mood strikes me. I'm Ari Temkin. Thank you all for being a part of the show today. Thank you to William White and Jesse Truitt and Ray Pierce and Robert Anchetta and, everybody that joins the show every day. Appreciate you all. You guys make this show what it is. This show wouldn't be the same without you and your participation. So thank you. Thank you for doing it. Tell your friends. Tell people that you know that are Cowboys fans. Patrick Prescott does that every day. I appreciate everybody that's part of the show that helps to grow this show, grow the audience, and is here with me every day as we talk Cowboys and get you ready for the regular season. Albert Avila and Chris Bennett and Sean Moore and Joe Tranchina. And keep commenting because then I'll see the names that I recognize and then I'll remember to name those people because I like to give recognition to the folks that are here every day with me, streaming it live 12 to 1 every day. Because again, this show, it's all about you. It's all about you and your participation and you being a part of the show. The show doesn't exist without you. being my co-hosts. So appreciate you, Albert Carrizosa. And Robert Blizzard, it's a cool name. I don't think I've seen you before, so come back tomorrow, and then I'll mention your name as one of those people. Kerry Carlton, Rick Schelker, Charles Grau, Wayne Gibson, I mentioned him, and many others. So thank you again. Thank you to all of you that are here every day, part of the show, part of this community. The show wouldn't exist without you and your participation. So thanks again. TJ Carpenter, want more Cowboys talk? That's coming up next right here on Phantom. So make sure to go like the page and hit that like button at facebook.com/watch Phantom. But for now,